Good morning, my name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic. I've done the work out of the book with the Big Book Step Study sponsor, a loving God that I found in AA, meetings like these, people like you, making amends and practicing the AA program of recovery every day. I've had a sore throat this week and my voice has been cracking. I feel like Bobby Brady. Thanks to the over 45s in the crowd for that. So step 11, how do you get to step 11? Steps 1 through 10. I had to do the rest of the program to get here. This is very bad. That's not to say that I can't begin prayer early in my recovery. In fact, one of the very first things that I was told at the very first AA meeting I ever went to is that to be relieved of that obsessive thinking, to get on my knees and ask a power greater than myself for those thoughts to be removed. I'm an alcoholic. So here you go. I'll give you just a brief history to qualify. I have an allergy to alcohol, so when I start drinking, I can't stop, and I think about it all the time when I'm not drinking. So I belong here. That's my brief qualifier. And those things were pointed out to me from working with a sponsor, which is also very important to me. I can't do this myself. I'm not the brightest guy in the room. I'm not the dumbest guy in the room. But I can't figure this out just trying to read it because my brain's broken and I'm going to interpret it to what I wanted to read. So I had to have a sponsor to help me with that. Big Book Step Study was my first introduction to working the steps. That happened relatively early in my sobriety, about 3 months sober when I was introduced to my sponsor. And I did the work with him and we went through these steps. It took a long time for me. Like it says at the end of this step, we alcoholics are undisciplined, and that was certainly the truth for me. This reading is really great in terms of practical suggestion. Retiring at night, I'm going to review my day. How did I do today? Where did I fail? Not when, because the truth is I'm going to fail every day, and that's okay. I'm only human. The thing is, what do I do with those failures? Do I learn from them, grow from them, and try not to do those things again? Ideally, yes. I found out in step 3, maybe even before that I can't wish away the thought of a drink on my own. You hear a lot of meetings, people say, just don't drink. If I could just don't drink, I would be at home just not drinking right now. I wouldn't be here. I can't just not drink. That doesn't work for me. And so early on, I had that God of my understanding. And that relationship in the very beginning was very, very tenuous with me. I didn't have any concept of what a God was. I had always, I guess, believed in God, but I always thought God was for other people that were good, people that went to church, people, I don't know, just not me. I didn't think God wanted anything to do with me. And the truth couldn't be farther from that. God takes an interest in all of us. And I had to start to develop that relationship. And, I remember early on, I'd been in an apartment by myself in Southbridge, me and a houseplant, and I'm hitting my knees. It died. I'm hitting my knees. Your laughter hurts. And I'm hitting my knees to pray to this God that I've newly been introduced to, and I'm looking over my shoulder to make sure the plant isn't being judgmental. That's how out of element it was for me to do this, to begin to develop that relationship with God. And it talks right before the third step that we lack of power is our dilemma, and lack of power is my dilemma in terms of a drink, in terms of my selfishness, in terms of my fear, my anger, my delusion. I have no control over any of those things. And on my own, I'm helpless over all those things. All those things. So I have to find a power greater than myself. And it says that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object, the main purpose of the book, and by design, the AA program, really, is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And the beauty of working these steps, this is really annoying, working these steps the way they're laid out, is that if I follow the directions I'm given, in spite of myself, I find I'm developing a relationship with that God. And so I move from a place of worrying about what the houseplant thinks to now being comfortable with being in a room full of people, some I know well, some strangers, and talking about my relationship with God. And that's a huge change for me and a huge change for a lot of people, I think. And, getting back to the book, there are some really great directions in here. I review my day at the end of the day, kind of take a step 10 inventory, and I got good at inventory from doing that fourth step. I'm really not a nighttime guy, so I don't do much with that. I kind of thank God for my day, and I hit the pillow and I'm done. And it talks about, on awakening. And I'm a morning person. I like getting up early. No one in my house does, which is great because there's a beautiful silence early in the morning. And it's like, I imagine it as a thin glass crystal sphere. And it's perfect and it's quiet, and then somebody wakes up and shatters it. But while I have that, it's a perfect time to start my day and to reflect on my day. And I ask God first and foremost, and probably the most important thing that I do is I ask for those obsessive thoughts of a drink to be taken away. I was tormented by those thoughts for decades. It ran my life. It determined what I was doing, who I was doing with, when I was doing it, and where it was going to happen. Everything. And so every morning, I did it this morning, I try never to miss. I used to be very proud and say, I never miss. And I was getting a little prideful, and I missed one day, so now I don't say that anymore. But anyway, I try never to miss a day doing that. If I stopped doing that, would those thoughts of a drink come back into my head? I have no idea. I'm not willing to take a chance of that for such a small effort outlaid. I'm lazy, I'm undisciplined. When I get such a huge return for such a small investment, I love that. That's great. And so on Awakening, it talks about I consider my plans for the day. And that's what I do. And I ask God every morning to keep me away from the thoughts of a drink or a drug. And I ask to not be as selfish today. Because that's one of my main, the main problem I have with life in general is when I'm thinking about me too much. When I'm not worried so much about me, when I'm worried about what plan God has for me to help other people, I'm taken care of far better than anything I could possibly ask for. And that's the truth, I ask God to remove the fear and the delusion. I can lie to myself very easily. If I lie to myself very easily, you're a piece of cake to lie to. So I have to start with me. Take away that delusion. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties. They're a gift from God. Man's ability to think and judge and reason, when applied properly, that's proper use of the will, when I'm trying to align God's will with mine. Now, I've been developing a relationship with the God of my understanding for a lot of years. And, relationships are hard work, no matter what the relationship is. Whether it's a person and their spouse, employer, kids, family, people just out in public, friendships. Relationships are hard work. It's got to be a give and take. And so if I don't spend time developing my relationship with the God of my understanding, then how can I expect anything to come from that? I can't just sit back and wait for God to phone me up and say, hey, what are you doing today? It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And I've never had that call. My phone's never rung and it hasn't said God. I don't hear a voice in my head. At least I don't hear the voice of God in my head. The voices have good ideas sometimes. But the truth is I get direction from God when I ask. You know, a thought will come into mind that's completely out of character for me. What can I do from someone else? Don't be afraid in this situation. Don't be afraid. What a wonderful sentiment to have and to live by. Because so much of the trouble in my life comes from me being afraid. Afraid I'm not good enough, afraid of what people will think of me. Just fearful, and it's palpable and intrinsic in me, I guess. And with the God of my understanding and a strong relationship that I've built through working these steps, unbeknownst to me, it just happens, I have that fear immediately begin to be removed. Not taken away completely. Some fears are healthy, but you know, it's an amazing thing. And that relationship continues to grow, and I continue to develop that. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. That's me turning around every minute. And I've gotten accustomed, I've gotten comfortable with God. And so when things are bad or when things are troubling or fearful, I'm comfortable going to God and just saying, please help me. And when I work with guys, I tell them to, I suggest, I don't tell anybody to do anything, I suggest that they work on developing that relationship with God. Remember, it's the main object of this. And I suggest that, you know, even when things are good, I'm walking out the door this morning and I'd forgotten something that I needed to bring with me today, and the thought popped into my head. Is that God? I don't know. I said, thank you, God. God bless you. I said, thank you, God. Walked in and got what I needed. And when things are good, I thank God and I talk to God. When things get hot, now I have that tool ready to use. And instead of trying to pour more me on it, which is going to make a mess out of it, I can go to God and say, God, help me. Because I've used this tool over and over again. I liken it to, and people may have heard this before, I liken it to being, if you can imagine yourself trapped in a room that's on fire and the door is blocked and the room is quickly filling up with smoke. There's a fire extinguisher there, but you've never used it. What's going to happen? You're going to die. Most likely, you're going to be overcome by the smoke and suffer a choking, burning death. Now, on the other hand, if you've drilled and practiced with that fire extinguisher and you find yourself in that room, what's the outcome going to be then? Better. You're going to pick that up, you're going to put that fire out, and you're going to walk out of that room. And that's how I relate my relationship with God. When I practice it, when I use it, when I develop the relationship, when things are good, then when things are not so good, when the smoke's coming up and it's getting warm in the room, I know what to do because I've practiced it. I don't